Good morning, Betsy. How are you?
I'm great. I am so honored to be here, and it's so good to see you, Bart.
Thank you. Same here. It's lovely for you to come up and talk about Swanee and do this interview for us. The first thing we'd like to ask you is how did you meet John Swanhaus, or Swanee as we call him?
I met John on a blind date, the first blind date of my entire life. My roommate, Mary Corrigan, said, Betsy, you're going on a blind date tonight. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't go on blind dates. She said, well, I've already set it up with Kevin, and you're going. And I said, I'm not going. I spent the entire day trying to get someone to go out with John Swanhaus, which is what I heard his name was, John Swanhaus.
Swanhaus?
Swanhaus. So I said, I am not doing this. Anyway, I couldn't find anyone who would go out with him because they said, oh, no, he's wild. He's a challenge. And I was like, well, I thought, well, that might actually be sort of fun. So I decided to go. I was basically stuck. I had to go. So I came down the steps of the dorm, and there he was, waiting in the hallway. And I thought, wow.
Well, can you describe what it was like when you
It
first met him? And
it was good. I remember he had a maroon sweater on and khaki pants, and he was quite handsome. I was shocked.
Yes, he was a good-looking guy.
And I thought, this might be okay. So we went to the Cobblestones, which was the local bar, which is probably still a local bar. And we had an amazing time. And I think he especially liked me because I was a cheap date. I only had one beer all night, which I guess that's good when you're in college if your date doesn't like to drink much. But we danced and we laughed, and I kissed him on the first date, which I didn't really believe in, ever kissing anybody on the first date. But I basically fell in love with John Swanee that night.
Well, it started a romance that lasted from your freshman year all the way?
We were
40 years?
19 years old. Sophomore year was March. I remember it as if it were yesterday. And we just were basically in love from that night on.
Well, when John got to play rugby, how much of a role did rugby play in his life at that point in time?
Rugby played quite a big part. Actually, that was March, so rugby was in the fall of the next year. I had never been to a rugby game, so he said, this will be different, but I think you'll like it. So I went to the rugby game. I think it was maybe the Columbia Old Blues, and I couldn't believe it was pretty rough and sort of violent. People were bleeding. Mm-hmm. Somebody bit John's ear. And the guy said, that's your fault, mate. You need to tape your ears next game.
That's right, or wear a scrum cap or something.
Or wear a scrum cap.
Yeah.
So, and then the amazing part was the party after the game. And that was something else because here they were opponents on the field, and then they were such close friends as soon as the game was over, and everybody sang songs. And I'd never seen a sport where you were so friendly with the opponent. And I remember the songs. Some of them were pretty rowdy. Mm-hmm. Something about I'd hook balls and you'd hook balls and we'd be rugby hookers. And I was like, oh, this is different.
John played hooker on the team too, right?
Yeah, that's right. He played hooker. And so, all sorts of great songs and a lot of beer was consumed. I remember that. But such a great spirit. I have never seen a sport that has such a great spirit as rugby.
Betsy, what impact do you think rugby had on John in his life after Fairfield?
I think he took rugby with him in his heart after Fairfield. I think it's such a team sport. You're really not out there to be a star. You're there to play as a team. And I just think it made him a team player at work. And I think it gave him such a self-confidence from being a good rugby player. And I think the camaraderie that he found on the team, he just took with him. And he, in our community, had hundreds of friends. And at work, everyone liked John. And I think that laugh of his, there was no laugh like that laugh. It just permeated any room he was in, whether it was at work or home, or even the movie theater. At the movie theater, people would start laughing at the movie because he was always laughing. So I think that was one of his best qualities. But I just think he learned mostly camaraderie and good sportsmanship through rugby, and he took that with him. And he actually became an ice hockey coach for our children for years after rugby. And I think he was a very good coach, and I think he learned those skills by playing rugby.
Well, can you think of any stories that illustrate his love of rugby and the rugby club in particular?
Well, I just remember his first game. I think he was a freshman because he was on the first rugby team.
That's right.
And I didn't know him then. I didn't meet him till sophomore year. But he always told the story about he was a freshman. He probably looked like he was about 14. And he loved all the guys on the rugby team who were older. I mean, he admired all of them. And he had such a good time at that first game. He scored the winning goal. And he became the hero of the rugby team that day at 18 years old. And so they said, come on, we're going to celebrate this victory. You are our star, and we're going to introduce you to beer. And he had never really ever had beer. And so that was the first day he met beer. And he always said, what a day that was. I think he was so sick, and he got back to Fairfield late. He had to sign in, I guess, by midnight, and he didn't get there, I think, till 1:30 in the morning. And he was in big trouble and had to go the next week to meet the dean. They were so upset that this freshman would be so rowdy and not respect the rules. So he thought he was going to be kicked out of school his second month in college, but it ended up fine. I think he ended up becoming best friends with the dean. But he could just imagine his mother getting the letter in the mail. Dear Mrs. Swanhaus, your son has been expelled his second month of college. So that didn't happen. But anyway, he was a very good boy from then on. And he tried so hard in school and worked so hard and got amazing grades. I think his only C was in theology, which was too bad, but sort of funny. And he was a superstar. He was a great athlete, and he was a great student. And as a girlfriend, I thought that that was awesome, that someone handsome could be so smart and such a great athlete at the same time.
Well, I have to agree with you. And as you know, I saw it firsthand because John and I were roommates down at Fairfield Beach for 2 years. And I saw him grow into a great player and became captain of the team. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think rugby meant to John over the course of his life? And in that context, why do you think he tried out for football during the time he was at Fairfield?
Well, I think rugby, it was just who he was. He really liked that roughness. I think it got rid of his frustrations, and he liked being part of the team, and he just loved the people that he was playing rugby with, and he liked those great parties afterwards too, I have to say. But I think he wanted to play football all through high school and never played high school. So when Fairfield started a football club, I think he thought, this is my moment. And he tried out and made the team, and he was so excited. And unfortunately, the third game, his parents came. His mother was not a fan of football. She thought he might get hurt. Well, he did get hurt. He broke his ankle the third game of the season. And that was really hard and sad for him. But guess what? He went right back to rugby the following year.
Yes, and we welcomed him back because he was such a good player.
Yeah. And he was so happy to be back with rugby. And no padding or anything in rugby, right?
That's right. That is right. That's right.
But he liked it much better.
Well, what about you? How did you see the club from your perspective as the girlfriend of one of our best players and a spectator? And how did it affect you, and what are your feelings about it?
You know what? I felt like I was one of the cheerleaders. I don't think you had any cheerleaders, but I felt like I had to be at every game and every party because I felt like this is my team. And I almost felt like this is my school. I love Fairfield so much, and I think it was because of rugby, and I felt like I knew everyone at Fairfield, even the priests. Some of the priests would come to the parties. And I just felt like, this is my college too. I loved it. I always love it.
Well, John is with us in spirit, and as you know, and we're going to be gathering for our 50th anniversary next October 5th. So what message do you think he might want to share with everybody if he were in the room?
If he were in the room, he would say, you guys, I loved you so. You were everything to me. I would have done anything for any of you. And I feel like you would have done the same for me. And I've taken you with me in my heart my whole life. You'll always be special to me, as well as Fairfield. I really appreciate the education I got at Fairfield. I really enjoyed my Jesuit education. It's a very fine education. And then I think he would say, life is short. John died at 61 of pancreatic cancer. He worked out 5 days a week. He was a runner. He believed in exercise. He believed in, number one, I think, loving me. We had a beautiful marriage, 40 years. He loved our 3 sons and our daughter. And he also played a huge part in our community and was on the board of directors at Fairfield, board of trustees, and he was also involved with AmeriCares. They help third world countries, and on the board at the Malta House, which helps unwed pregnant women. And so he really, truly gave back to his community. And he was so well respected. So we were all, devastated when he died 5 years ago. But he left behind so many good qualities for us to emulate. And everyone has told me that he was such an inspiration to them. Mm-hmm. And that started way back when I'd go to those rugby games. They would just say, Swanee is the greatest guy. And you know what? He was. And when he died, his whole family was around him. And I was holding his hand. And I felt him go to heaven. And I really did. And that's where he is now. So you have a new saint to pray to, St. John. Or you could call him St. Swanee if you wanted.
Well, I'll remember him as St. Swanee. And we will never forget your generosity in coming down here to do this interview for us. John was one of the originals, as you know, was one of our best players, and you just so eloquently stated his legacy. So I hope you and your family would come to the celebration next year. We're going to remember John and some of the other ruggers that aren't with us anymore. And I just can't thank you enough. And it's so good to see you after all these years.
Great to see you, Bart, and I will definitely be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bart. My honor.